Hi, I am Pratim Ranjan Bose, and you are watching Podcast with Pratim, presented by Iravati Research and Communication Center, or IRCC. This is a part two of the discussion with Ambassador Ajay Bisaria, India's former envoy to Pakistan, Canada, and Poland. Link of the part one is given at the details of this video. In this part, we will focus on India-Russia relations. Sir, it is in the interest of both India and Russia to escalate trade and investment. A bigger market interest in India should help Russia to reduce part of its dependence on China and the West. It should also help India to hedge geopolitical risks against China and should help de-dollarization of the trade. However, there are a couple of questions. Let me ask you the first question. The bilateral trade has increased sixfold in the last 2 years. But how sustainable is this trade? Right now, I think it is around 65 billion. It was around 10 billion only 2 years ago. And because there is a basic issue of connectivity gap. So how are we going to mitigate that? I'm aware that INSTC has started operating. But do you think that INSTC will be a game changer? Because we have an issue here, the Indian-Russia trade. Our primary requirement or what had inflated the trade was energy commodities. So this is a volume commodity, particularly oil is fine, it's high cost, but coal is not as high cost. And if you are moving it through INSTC in such multimodal route, what would be the cost impact is to be seen. So over to you, sir.
I think this is an important question in the bilateral relationship. It used to be a question even in the Indo-USSR relationship. We had a significant amounts of trade between India and USSR, which used to be till 1901, based on barter and rupee trade. And then when we moved to hard currency trade, we've always encountered in this relationship the problem of low levels of trade. As you mentioned, trade was hovering under $10 billion. In 2014, when Modi and Putin had their first annual summit, it was under $10 billion. And they had set a target of over $30 billion by 2025. Now, I think if you look at the broader relationship, what distinguishes the India-Russia relationship from others, that it's largely state-driven. You don't have the elements you have in the US relationship, for instance, of the 5 million diaspora who push and energize a large part of the relationship. You don't have the business-to-business component in the relationship. You have the pillars of the relationship, which are political, which are strategic, nuclear, defense, space, but the business-to-business was lacking. And but a new dimension that has emerged in the last couple of years because of what you might call a geopolitical accident of this war is the sudden surge in energy trade, energy exports. So if you include the entire gamut of the energy relationship, it is more than $60 billion of imports by India of oil, and adding to the nuclear energy, which Russia is the only global partner for India, which is actually delivering 2,000 megawatts of nuclear energy in Kudankulam, and 4 more units are in the pipeline, so 4,000 megawatts more. And the Russians are offering to have another site and, and much more nuclear energy as well. So what we have today is a strong energy partnership, which is positive, and there may be ways of taking it forward even in a post-Ukraine war situation. So, in the next 10 years, say we assume that this war will get over within a year, there would be reason to increase or sustain this level of interaction. And indeed, in the agreement that was signed, the joint statement by Putin and Modi recently, they set a target of $100 billion. So the attempt is to increase the level of trade. But right now, you will face peculiar problems. You face a problem of rupee surpluses because companies and banks have to navigate Western sanctions against Russia. And therefore, there would be this trade imbalance, which has to be addressed in different ways. So there will have to be a lot of innovation in dealing with this business to business situation. Indian industry will have to be encouraged to look at Russia as an opportunity, and as indeed Russia would have to look at the India opportunity. For instance, using these surpluses for investment in India, in the India story, which is of a major economy growing on a 6 to 8% path and possibly on a 8 to 10% path. So if Russia invests its surpluses in India, it will only gain as the Indian economy grows. So I think it presents us challenges, but also opportunities, this new situation of a surge in the trade relationship and the energy relationship.
I will come back to this rupee-ruble part. I have a wider question. The INSTC is the sole difference between 2014 and 2024. And the two leaders of the joint declaration, they spoke about the India-Eurasian Economic Union FTA, which is highly advisable. But again, the problem is about the connectivity. Now, Armenia falls on INSTC. But what about Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan? How will they be sending or taking goods? The only way is through China. So this is this, do you think, I mean, it needs sufficient state support. Now, what we saw in the oil trade during the peak in 2022, when Russia was giving deep discount, so India picked it up. Russia has an investment through Naira refineries, but then there was, due to US sanction, they had to dissociate. But then as the crude prices went up, so Europe started guzzling Indian refined products. So then Russia had suddenly, we saw the decline in imports from Russia because there was no state mechanism. Russian, I think, they also don't have that kind of, they are very Europe-oriented, their sales, Europe and China-oriented. So do you think, do you see a change in their systems to support this FTA? It should happen, but are they moving in that direction, or are we moving in that direction?
This FTA has been on the table for a long time, and it's good to talk about it, but there are numerous practical problems. But, there is a group of experts on both sides who are having this conversation. And what is clear is that there is a political will now at the top to push it. So we are living in an era, at least in the last 5 years, of these limited FTAs, which India is trying to hammer out with a lot of partners. We already have it with Australia and the UAE. And, in the works with UK, there was one with Canada, which was being negotiated, but because of the political circumstances, it had to be put into freeze. But I think this is the way forward, and we have to look at the options and make it less ambitious, because it need not be a completely ambitious, full-blown FTA, but a limited one to at least make it a building block to a larger one when it comes about. So there is a political signal that let's do it. Now, the other issue you raised is a more serious constraint in the trade between the countries, which is connectivity. And we have for decades been trying to get over this issue. Depending on the geopolitics, we were even discussing of a South Asian corridor, which went through Pakistan and Afghanistan into Central Asia. But now we have multiple options on the table. We have the INSTC. We had a conversation of a Chennai-Vladivostok kind of corridor. We also have a conversation about the Chabahar route, which could become an INST's sort of eastern leg, eastern link. And if that can be connected north into the Central Asian countries, so it can have two different links, one going to the Caucasus and north into Russia, another going via Central Asia. So, and of course, we have the India-Middle East corridor. So I think these are all ideas which we should look at it in a 10-year frame. But what we also need is immediate innovation in trade, in promoting newer kind of goods like electronics exports, which is a new India success story from India to Russia. So to balance this trade imbalance, India will have to look at ways of increasing newer classes of exports, and apart from finding the pathways and the networks to send them. So I think we have this sudden surge, but the challenge will be to sustain it and not make it only energy, and to be able to balance it as well.
You spoke about Rupee-ruble. Now, here is an interesting case, is that the world is taking steps towards de-dollarization, which will take many decades, but they are moving steadfastly towards it. India is lagging behind because Indian currency is not an international currency. Rupee, that is exactly why we launched this Rupee window, trade window with many countries, UAE to Bangladesh and etc. But it is not really working, and it cannot work. And we can see it why in Russia's case. Now, trade imbalance you cannot remove with an energy producer. We need that energy. For example, with Canada also. So don't you think it's time for RBI to make a move to find a more sustainable solution to pave way for rupee trade? I mean, they have to move towards convertibility, limited convertibility, or whatever it is. And I have another question here. Russia had a typical problem that they had the surplus and they don't know what to do with that Indian currency. Now, India recently allowed that Russia can invest in India, and after that, we heard that Russia has invested in India, but we don't know where it is invested, in what class of assets. Do you have any idea about it?
I think this conversation has been going on for a while. In India, as you know, there was rupee trade and the Vostro accounts, which were accounts in Indian banks holding those rupee balances for a lot of the export from Russia to India, including of arms, was being used. And then we moved to a more hard currency situation, but the residual payments were continuing in this fashion. Now, what you've raised are some macroeconomic issues which are not really related to, but only tangentially related to the India-Russia problem. For instance, the issue of capital account.
Sorry to interject, sir. It is not an issue even with not India-Russia. I mean, let us look at India-UAE trade. It has to be highly imbalanced trade because you are importing crude oil.
No, fair enough. I think that is a fair assumption and fair observation that when you are importing energy, you need that energy, and you cannot necessarily have a completely balanced picture. But it also throws up an opportunity because you could A, increase exports, B, use those surpluses for investment in India, allow them innovative pathways through RBI notifications and so on for those surpluses to be invested in India. And the third point is what you're mentioning, currency. That, can be trade in, can be have exchanges in rupees and not in dollars. So I think that is a larger question of the RBI's position and India's position on macroeconomic stability.
I
And
asked you
capital.
because you served a term in World Bank. So you are a student of economics, and so I asked you this.
Yes. So capital account convertibility is not something that is on the cards immediately. It's something
It has
economists
been spoken
debate
about for
about.
some time.
Yes, so they will debate about, but right now we're looking at an innovative carve out to deal with an immediate problem of surpluses. How can we deal with it? For instance, even in Russia, India-Russia trade, there was talk about making some payments in third currencies, not dollar and not rupee and not ruble, but something like the dirham and UAE currency and so on. So I think there is I believe, a committee that
That
is
I think
looking at.
SCO proposed using renminbi. Even Russia proposed that you use renminbi. Now we have a problem with renminbi. So
Exactly. So that will not be something, there'll be multiple ideas on the table. Some of them will be acceptable, some not. So, we don't want to move from a US dollarization to a Chinese renminbization situation. So I think what we need to be doing is constantly looking at solutions, constantly being innovative in this, and the regulators will also have to be flexible in allowing some kind of trade, because this problem will be with us for a while, or at least it's a problem of plenty. We are getting discounted oil, which is giving us a big bonus in terms of the savings we get in our economy, and the challenges of using those surpluses and paying Russia in some way.
right. I mean, let's look at another perspective. If you could trade through Indian rupees, then you could have sourced oil from Iran at a discount, which China is doing.
Absolutely. So, that again is an idea that has been on the table, that there was some extent of import of Iranian oil using these methods, and that was also talked about. But the fact of Western sanctions is also a reality, and that Indian banks and Indian corporates which have substantial exposures in the West will be nervous about. So, there is reason to find carve-outs and innovative solutions so that all this can be navigated.
Right. Sir, there is a school of thought that considers Russia as a dead horse. Their economy is not as robust. I'm aware that they have moved up on the recent World Bank ranking. They have moved up from upper middle income to the rich economy. But let's look at the facts that, except in certain areas, specific areas of manufacturing, they're primarily into the natural resource-based economy. The crux of the issue is that China is their #1 trade partner. The maximum exports is to China. India probably is in 15th or so. China is also the largest source of FDI, and geographically, they are absolutely rightly placed to have an upper hand in the trade. So the question here is, I mean, I'm saying that many think that you are using, if you increase trade and etc. with Russia, more better relations with Russia, you can hedge against the Chinese aggression against on Indian borders or in the Indian neighborhood, etc. But how fair is this assumption? Because if the time comes, Russia, I mean, ideally, Russia has greater leverage with China than India.
Yes, but your interest is not on worrying about how much leverage the Chinese have on the Russians or vice versa. Your interest is your national interest served in a relationship with Russia, and what is it that you're getting out of it? You are getting a good deal, even if you make the argument that Russia is in relative decline, which it is. Compared to China, certainly, which is a relatively ascending power, where Russia is a declining power. Yet Russia remains a significant global power. And you will serve niches of interest. You will not get everything from every partner, but there will be, Russia gives you some niche critical technologies in defense, like S-400, nuclear submarines, BrahMos. It may not give you everything it had given in the past in terms of aircraft, where you may have other diversified sources. Similarly, nuclear energy. There may be other technologies available, but Russia has delivered it in Kudankulam. So similarly, other areas of technology, you don't know where the innovations will come from in the future. The Russians have a lot of innovation in space, for instance. So there is a good deal of niche availability of technologies. It won't match some of our Western partners in terms of the innovation coming from
even in
private
pharma.
sector, exactly, even in pharma. So, there are, I think the way to look at a partner is where we maximize our benefits and not just our economic benefits, but also our geopolitical benefits. Because if your central strategic challenge is dealing with a belligerent and rising China, then it gives you an additional driver to engage with China's closest ally, which is Russia, and have some modulating influence on China, just as it is important for you to engage with China's major global competitors, which is the US, the Quad, and others. So I think what India is doing is that it's looking at every partner in a multi-aligned kind of way and trying to get the best out of each, which is just the way smart diplomacy and smart geopolitics needs to be done.
Thank you so much, sir. Thanks.
Thank you.